morning.
Good morning to everyone.
Yes, it's good to be near the church, our beautiful church. Welcome to our spiritual home.
We miss everybody.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tarpon Springs, located in the heart of the walkable Tarpon Springs Historic District and known as the home of the Innes paintings. We are a liberal community for all ages, promoting spiritual growth, social justice, and the arts. I'm Reverend Christina Spouty, minister here of UUCTS. I'm glad you are here. I hope that you find meaning in today's service. Please consider joining us on a Sunday morning when we gather to worship as a community every week beginning at 10:30 a.m. on Zoom, or drop in for a more personal visit to one of our coffee hours starting at 11:30 on Sundays on Zoom. If you are new to the area or just learning about Unitarian Universalism, we'd love to meet you in one of our newcomer discussions, which are held on the second Sunday of each month at 12:15. Please refer to our website for information about how to connect with us on Zoom. Our service associate will now begin today's service. Let us enter this sacred time with open minds and open hearts.
Hello, I'm Kathy Hopkins, the president of UUCTS and the service associate for today. Thank you for coming. Welcome. The sermon today is titled, Leading the Faith into the Future. Our guest speaker, Gregory C. Carrow Boyd, will lead us in exploring vibrant ways to lead Unitarian Universalism into a better future, starting with holistically rethinking how the identities of the people we serve impact who we are as UUs. Mr. Boyd is a mastered, credentialed religious educator and aspirant for ministry. He serves on the Board of Trustees for the UUA. In this time of physical distancing, Greg misses hugs and movie theaters. Greg also works as the coordinator for More Than Sex Ed, a greater LA-based sexuality education collective that brings the Our Whole Lives curriculums to the schools, homeschool groups, and the greater community. Reverend Christina knows Greg from Ferry Beach when they were both there to attend some training. She was eager to have him speak with us because, first of all, she says he's just brilliant, but also because he has a strong background in governance from having served on the UUA Board of Trustees. Today, Reverend Christina will share the story for all ages and an inspirational reading related to the sermon. And as usual, Bonnie Whitehurst will tie it all together with music. We extend a thank you to all of those who did the behind the scenes work to produce this service. And now for our chalice lighting. These words about thresholds are by Florence Caplow. We kindle the flame, honoring the doorways in our souls, the windows through which we gaze at one another, the balconies where we catch glimpses of sky, the thresholds we stand on this morning, wondering, hoping, fearing, dreaming.
In the depths of the darkness, there's a place with no name. In the center of the darkness, there's the power of the flame. We are called by that power to bring peace to the earth and to care for all our neighbors, sharing love's greatest word.
Our story today is called Mouse and Crow, and it's by Kelly Wiseman Asbruth Jackson. There was once a crow who was very hungry. Flying over the tops of the trees, it spotted a large, tasty-looking walnut growing from one of the tallest branches below. Seeing the makings of a fine supper, the crow swooped down and plucked the dangling walnut and held it triumphantly in its beak. The crow flapped its wings happily and began to think about how best to break open the shell of the walnut. Meanwhile, on the ground below the crow, an equally hungry mouse saw everything that had happened and decided that it wanted that same walnut for itself. With a plan that was clever, though not particularly nice, the mouse called up to the crow high in the tree. "Say there, friend crow, what's that you have in your beak?" The crow, who was hungry enough by now that it wasn't thinking all of its decisions through very well, called back, "I've found a very nice walnut and am going to eat it." When the crow opened its mouth to say all that, the walnut fell out of it and dropped to the ground, just as the mouse had hoped it would. But the mouse didn't count on where the walnut would land when it fell. It hit the ground and rolled into a shallow hole. The mouse ran to the hole and reached in to pull out the walnut so that it could crack the shell and eat it. But the hole was just small enough that the mouse could not pull it out. With both its paws wrapped around, the walnut was too wide to get back up out of the hole. The crow, meanwhile, was unhappy at having been tricked out of its supper and began to shout at the mouse below, who couldn't leave because it was still holding on to the walnut, trying and failing to pull it back out of the hole in the ground. Now, if the two of them had worked together, they both might have gotten to enjoy some of that walnut. The crow could have pecked its sharp beak down into the hole and broken up the walnut into smaller pieces. Then the mouse could have reached in and picked each piece out one at a time. But instead, the two of them were stuck there, arguing with each other and both still hungry. The mouse because it couldn't let go, and the crow because it couldn't hold on.
Light of our hearts, fires burning bright, we dream of the spring this winter's night. Surely the earth is turning from dark to light. Gathered friends in reverence here to celebrate this winter's night. Surely the earth is turning from dark to light. Gathered friends in reverence here to celebrate this winter's night.
And our reading for today is called We Find Our Salvation Here by Deanna Vandiver. Throughout time, our Unitarian Universalist faith tradition has held a thread of clarity. How we relate to each other creates the conditions of hell or heaven here on earth. We may not know or agree about what lies beyond this life, but it's our conviction that our actions and our inactions have consequences for the web of all existence. While fascinating and mysterious, we do not place our hopes for salvation in what happens after death. We find our salvation here on earth, showing up for each other with mercy, respect, and compassion. How are we relating to our neighbors, friends? As a people of faith, we are called to a love that is bold, to love beyond our skill and through our fear with courage and compassion. As a faithful collective, we are called to offer sanctuary, refuge, and comfort to everyone afflicted by the systems of oppression in this world. As faithful individuals, we are called to relationships of care and accountability. It makes a difference in the quality of this world when people with access to privilege and power give voice to a vision of collective liberation and name the obstacles within and without that limit us. Can we choose to live courageously, a people of faith, a people so bold? Can we faithfully challenge evil in the world and the sins of society that have become internalized within our beings? Our faith does not require that we be unafraid, only that we do not lead with fear or make our decisions from a place of fear. Our presence matters. How we relate to each other creates the conditions of hell or heaven here on earth. May we remember and affirm that we are all in this together, friends. We are all in this together. Amen.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Stay in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rising the sea. Move in the giving life the shape of justice. Roots will be crossed, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. For this we stand, all peoples of the earth, in spirit as in law, across this sacred land. All worth and dignity bestowed to each as right of birth. Our lives in interdependence. For this we stand. For this we stand. One human family, evolving tapestry spun of a single thread of earth and water, born this harvest of diversity. One flame of life bright within us. For this we stand.
The February Give the Plate will fund the Tarpon Springs Laundry Project, now planned for Q2 of this year. We did not collect enough money to fund a laundry project in our previous collection, and with our reduced social justice budget, we cannot fund the balance of the project. Please note that we will not have to provide volunteers for this project. Due to UUCTS COVID restrictions, Current of Tampa Bay will run the project on their own. A laundry project is desperately needed by low-income families in Tarpon Springs, especially now that more of our children are returning to school. Please give generously to ensure that all Tarpon Springs children can have clean clothes to wear to school and clean towels and bedding when they get home. Thank you for your support. Please go to our website, uutarpon.org, and click on the Donate button, selecting Laundry Project. If you are writing a check, put Laundry Project in the memo line and send it along to 57 Reed Street. And thank you.
Hello, UUs of Tarpon Springs. I'm so excited to spend this hour with you. When Reverend Christina invited me to share the message on my heart today, I knew that you would be receptive. So together, let's learn a little bit more about polity. Polity, which comes from the same root as politics, is the term designated for church governance. The church covers a vast array of scenarios in the life of a congregation. These situations include who the leaders of a congregation can be, both spiritual and administrative, how one becomes a member, if and what kind of belief tests are required for membership, how the budget is set, who can make high-level decisions about the ministry of the congregation, as well as who can remove others from the membership or ministry of a congregation. And while we can talk about the organization and governance and other faith lineages, polity is a term that almost exclusively refers to denominations with Christian heritage. Polity is specifically about the organization of churches, and all polities share the following attributes. They are grounded in Christian Bible. They clarify decision-making structures and who has decision-making authority, and they require members to affirm all-encompassing understandings of how the divine moves in the world. There are three basic forms of polity: Episcopal, Presbyterian, and Congregational. Each of these three basic forms can be further subdivided to demonstrate the nuances of church governance, but for the most part, we're going to stay at the high level. Each form is named for who in the system has the ultimate decision-making authority. For example, the episcopacy refers to bishops who have ultimate decision-making authority in an episcopal polity system. Catholicism, the Anglican or Episcopal Church, and the United Methodist Church are examples of churches that are governed through episcopal polity. Meanwhile, presbyter is a Greek word that means elder. And in Presbyterian polity, church governance is determined by a council of elders called a presbytery. This presbytery includes both clergy and laity who are fully formed in their Christian identity. Modern Presbyterianism most directly takes expression in 16th century Scotland, but it has a variety of expressions in the contemporary world. And while those churches that call themselves Presbyterian are generally the only communities that explicitly organize according to this form of polity, any church that uses a consultative body that has authority that is greater or more influential than the congregation, but where that same power is not concentrated in a single person, they have integrated elements of Presbyterian polity. North American Universalists who consolidated power at the level of the state and national conferences arguably were organized according to Presbyterian polity. And finally, congregational polity. Congregational polity refers to a system where ultimate authority for church governance rests wholly with the congregation. There are two basic forms of congregational polity: non-denominational and associational. Non-denominational congregational polity is the most extreme form of this governance expression. However, non-denominational it's more of a term of art that might reference communities that have written their own creed or maybe even other statements of faith that do not line up precisely with other Christian denominations, rather than a comment on the actual relationship between that church and other churches that might believe similarly. In associational congregational polity, congregations join for specific missional purposes while retaining their independence. So the United Church of Christ, the American and Southern Baptists, the Mennonites, the American Unitarian Association, and the Unitarian Universalist Association are all examples of systems organized around associational congregational polity. The associational congregational polity we use today as Unitarian Universalists originates in the Cambridge Platform of 1648. Under heavy criticism from Anglican and Presbyterian churches, leaders from various New England congregational churches met to craft this document that specifies several items that remain important to us as modern day UUs. Those are requirements for membership in a congregation, who the partners in a covenant are, the types of spiritual leaders in a congregation, as well as how they might be ordained, and the expectation of helping other congregations when they are in need. The platform does not anticipate something like the American Unitarian Association, which would not exist for close to another 200 years. And similarly, the Cambridge Platform does not even anticipate Unitarianism, which does not find documented expression in worship until close to 150 years after the writing of the platform. All polity is grounded in different interpretations of the writings of Christian Bible. While certain terms and concepts in church organization already existed in the Hebrew Bible, those are analogous systems that have always existed in other faith traditions as well. Church polity most directly references the letters of Saul of Tarsus, also called Paul. In letters that both he wrote and those that are attributed to him, Paul helps early church leaders navigate theological and church organization issues. In these letters, he leaves artifacts that various Christian churches then use to justify rule by bishops, councils of elders, or the congregation itself. Early Christians also use these letters to determine who gets to be in these decision-making bodies. For example, even the Cambridge Platform specifies that belief in Jesus, as well as a rigorous test, are requirements for membership in a congregation. These artifacts in church governance structure, in part, fuel some of the divisions of the Protestant Reformation, out of which Unitarian Universalism is one of many contemporary expressions. Polity further requires members of faith traditions to accept all-encompassing statements about how the divine moves in the world. And while most of the manifestations of polity are practical, we've got this church, we need some way to run it, the grounding of all polity is in fact theological. Each expression is an understanding of how God operates in the universe and therefore how we should organize everything from worship services to business meetings. So in Episcopal polity, it asserts that God is the head of the universe and therefore earthly representatives of God must also be the heads of the church. In Presbyterian polity, the assertion is that the divine moves through those who are most fully formed in their faith by evidence of learning and of call. And so a council of elders must run the church. And among many other assertions about the nature of the divine, practitioners of congregational polity believe that the divine moves in every member of a religious community, and so decisions must be made together. In other words, in covenant with one another and with the divine, we can know divine will best when we decide together. In order to decide together, however, we must know one another deeply. This truth is largely due to the fact that we either get free together or not at all. As my colleague, the Reverend Teresa Inez Soto says, all of us need all of us to make it. And I clarify a subtext that is already present in this statement. Each of us needs to know all of the important nuances of each of us in order to commit to the task of leading the faith into the future. This knowledge starts with the understanding that we know things from many different perspectives. If I am Black and you are queer, our understandings of the world take shape around our experiences with resistance and with oppression. If you are white, able-bodied, and male, and I am any other combination of identities, how you use power to help and to heal racist patriarchal trauma in an accountable way is a central measure of how deeply we can be in community together. It is the evidence that you might be willing to give up privilege so that we might all get free. And when we understand that we are all connected in an intersectional system where complexes of identities and social locations provide advantages in some contexts, while they also require us to fight just to be heard in others, we will be better able to bring more of each of us into the project of creating the liberating future worth leading the faith into. So the polity we use today as Unitarian Universalists requires a depth of trust that is ultimately liberating if we are to commit to it fully. We must choose and choose over and over again to create conditions where we who continue to experience racist and oppressive complexes every day can bring our whole selves without fear that we will be abused, dismissed, or identified as troublesome for simply having taken that risk in the first place. We must choose accountable community building and power sharing over individualism and power hoarding. Because we believe the divine moves in all of us, it is theological how we decide together. It is theological how we must work for justice together in ways that exercise the principles of deciding together. We need one another deeply, and all of us needs all of us to make a future worth leaning into. In our lively and living tradition, being intentional about how we uproot racism oppression along the way is important. It is essential. It is the work that we are called to do. And so, beloveds, it's time to get to work. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.
Faith of the heart, dear liberty, source of the light expanding, all of the church that is to be, all bondage not
closing words today come from Jean Harrison Newyar. In The Gift of Faith, she has written, "In the lore of ancient China, there is a story of a philosopher who was asked, 'Where is the road called hope?' He replied, 'It does not exist, but as people move forward upon it, it comes into being.' I invite you to continue moving forward, leading into the future of our faith on this shared road called hope with me."
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the light of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the light of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
I hope that you found meaning in today's service. Again, I invite you to consider joining us sometime on Sunday morning when we gather for worship as a community. The service starts at 10:30 a.m. on Zoom. You are also welcome to drop into our Zoom room coffee hour any Sunday at 11:30 for friendly conversation. If you are new to the area or just learning about Unitarian Universalism, we'd love to meet you in one of our newcomer discussions, which are held on the second Sunday of each month at 12:15. Please refer to our website for more information on how to connect with us on Zoom. If you use the Connect Online button, it will take you directly to any of our activities. We look forward to meeting you.